Alright, welcome in everybody. Today we are playing Colorizing. Not sure I got everything set up properly. How's my avatar? I mean, subtle mouth movements? It's being captured. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's pretty simple. Okay. What can you do? I'm experimenting with lots of different tracking technologies. So I'm trying a new one now. And there is hand tracking on this one, I think. Yep, there it is. But it's a little bit lagged. Like, I can't wave. This is the fastest I can wave without it losing tracking. If I wave, yep, I wave faster than that, and it's like, oh, you have no hands up, is what it thinks. Anyway, today we're checking out this game, Colorizing. I think it's a paint by numbers game, or coloring book game, maybe. So yeah, the disadvantage of this one is that the tracking is slow. So if I do fast movements, it just ignores it. But at least it does some mouth tracking. We'll do English. What options do we got? Music is good. Sound effect, yeah, that all looks fine. I guess it does controller because it's a B to go back. Is this a parrot maybe that we're gonna colorize? Press button to start. Well, okay, so can we colorize the wrong colors? No, we can't. We can only colorize the right cells. Is there a zoom? There is. This thing, I guess. Oh, it's mouse wheel. I like the music. Very soothing. What is it? His beak is gonna be all black? I think it's a parrot. Little asymmetric tail feather there. Very cute. What is this? Oh, maybe this is the branch that he's perched upon. Yeah, that looks like it. Beautiful plumage. African swallow. He's not dead. He's just hiding for the fjords. There we go, look at that. Beautiful. Complete image 1. That's the achievement we got. Let's do a harder level this time. So there's like a canary in the top. Are they all gonna be birds? I mean, the logo was a donut, so I think they're not all gonna be birds. We'll just start off with birds, I guess. I guess, like, if I just look at the silhouette, it's plausible that this is a chunky banana instead of a bird, but I feel like in the preview thumbnail, even though it's grayscale, you could kind of tell that it's a bird. Oh, is this a bow tie that he's wearing? That's pretty cute. Coloring in the banana now. Oh, this banana might be getting a little ripe. What is this? Is that a beak? Probably, I guess. More birds! But I saw the next one's a cat, so it's not all birds. This game isn't just for the birds. Wow, this guy's mostly one color, I guess. Well, mostly color number 2. One color, but that color is 2. Here's a cute kitty. Apparently orange cats are almost always male. And is it white cats or black cats? Maybe, I don't remember. Are almost always female? Because like maybe the gene that causes their furs to become that color tends to live on one chromosome or something like that, if I remember the explanation correctly. Oh no, maybe it's calico that's always female. The three colors splotchy cats. Let me ask Carmen, she probably knows. Where is it? Where the heck is Ask Harmony? Here it is. Fair and association between fur color and sex on cats, like orange cats tend to be male. Yes, Harmony says, there's a general trend in cat genetics where orange or ginger cats are more likely to be male. This is due to the gene for orange fur being located on the X chromosome. Since males have only one X chromosome, they only need one copy of the orange gene, while females have two X chromosomes and need two copies to be orange. So you can find more male orange cats than female ones. There you have it. Where's my mouse? Oh, here it is. Oh, it looked like the pink guy got stuck there. That one pink pixel. Ooh, another cat. We're being spoiled for cats here. This is like motivating music, right? This is the when a life coach tells you to go do something, this is the music that plays while they're telling you to do that. Oh, this cat is mostly gray? Interesting. Why? So how come some genes you need two copies of and some genes you only one copy of? Like, what does it mean to need a number of copies of a gene? Or else it won't take effect, I guess? Hang on, let me see. Can I get what's it called? ChatGPT 4.0 on my phone running? Is that a thing? Advanced voice mode. Free monthly preview. Use advanced mode for a short period each month. How short is short?
Anything that's on your mind? Hey, it's great to meet you. Nice to meet you. So, it's lovely to meet you. If there's anything you need, please don't hesitate to let me know. I'm here to help.
Maybe it's recency bias, but for some reason this one calls out to me. It's the last one on the list that they got. Hello? Oops. Hello?
Hey there. What's up?
I'm streaming on Twitch right now.
Nice. How's the stream going so far?
Pretty good. I got a question for you. We got cats. There's a relationship between the gender or the sex of the cat, I guess, and the color of the fur, right? Like orange cats are more likely to be male because there's like a gene that's on the X chromosome, so the male cat only needs one copy of it or something like that to be orange.
Yes, that's correct. The gene that determines orange fur in cats is located on the X chromosome. Since male cats have only one X chromosome, that's why they need just one copy of the gene to be orange. Female cats have two X chromosomes, XX, so they need two copies of the gene to be orange. This is why orange cats are more commonly male. It's a fascinating example of how genetics influence fur color in cats.
What does it mean to only need one copy of a gene for like the fur to become orange, for example? How come sometimes you need multiple genes, I guess two genes, and sometimes you only need one?
Great question. It all comes down to how the gene is expressed and whether it's dominant or recessive. In the case of orange fur in cats, the gene on the X chromosome is a dominant gene. If a male cat has the orange gene on his single X chromosome, he'll be orange because there's no competing gene on the Y chromosome. Females have two X chromosomes, so if they have the orange gene on one X chromosome, not the other, the non-orange gene can influence the fur colour. This is why you often see female cats with a mix of colours, like calicos or tortoiseshells, where one X chromosome carries the gene for orange fur, and the other carries a different colour gene. The interaction between these genes results in a mix of fur colours. So, needing only one copy of a gene to express a trait is typical of dominant genes, while traits that require two copies are usually linked to recessive genes.
How does that work? How does the dominant and recessive thing work? Because earlier you were saying for the female cats, the fur color thing, if they have two, I guess, different genes, or they get a mix of the colors, but like for blue eyes, for example, I think is recessive. So people usually don't have a mix of like blue eyes and brown eyes. They usually, if they have the blue eye and the brown eye gene, they just end up with brown eyes, I believe.
Exactly. You've got it. The difference in how these traits express themselves comes down to how dominant and recessive genes function. For traits like blue eyes, which are recessive, you need two copies of the gene for the trait to be expressed. If a person has one gene for blue eyes and one for brown eyes, the dominant brown eye gene will mask the blue, resulting in brown eyes. With the orange fur in cats, the gene is dominant, so if a cat has one copy of the orange gene, it will be expressed. In female cats, having two X chromosomes means they can carry different colour genes on each chromosome. This can lead to a mix of colours if one X has the orange gene and the other has a gene for a different colour, creating a patchwork of fur colours. So, the key difference is in how the dominant gene can overshadow a recessive one, while a recessive gene needs both copies to be the same for the trait to show.
I still don't get it. Like in some cases, if you have a dominant and recessive, you're saying the dominant just wins, like you get blue eyes. But in other cases, you're saying if there's a dominant and recessive, they become a mix. Like the cat is partially orange and partially other colors.
Yeah, it can be a bit confusing. The difference lies in how the traits are expressed in different species or contexts. In humans, most traits follow a simple dominant recessive pattern, where the dominant gene will mask the recessive one, like with eye colour. In cats, the mix of fur colours, like in calicos or tortoiseshells, happens because of a process called X inactivation. In female cats, one of the two X chromosomes in each cell is randomly inactivated or turned off. This means that in some cells, the X chromosome with the orange gene is active, while in other cells, the X chromosome with a different colour gene is active. This leads to a patchwork or mix of fur colours. So, while dominant genes usually mask recessive ones, the situation with fur colour in cats is a special case where random X inactivation allows for a combination of traits to be expressed.
So how come you see cats of like three color tricolor cats? Like if you're talking about this random inactivation thing, it sounds like you should only end up with 2 outcomes, but we end up with 3 colors on some cats.
Good observation. The tricolour or calico pattern can indeed have more than 2 colours, often including white. Here's how it works. The orange and black colours in calicos come from the 2 different versions of the fur colour gene on the X chromosomes, as we discussed. Random X inactivation leads to patches of orange and black fur. The white fur in calicos is due to a different genetic mechanism involving what's known as the white spotting gene. This gene is separate from the X chromosome and affects the distribution of pigment-producing cells during development. When these cells are absent in certain areas, you get patches of white fur. So, a tricolour cat like a calico has orange and black from the X-linked colour genes with random X inactivation, plus white from the separate white spotting gene. The combination of these genetic factors creates the beautiful patterns we see in tricolour cats.
Hey, Little Bear Tess. Little Bear Tess is a viewer, and she just came into chat. Welcome in. They redeem hydrate, so I'm gonna take a sip from my drink here. I'm switching hand tracking software test, so I don't know how well it's gonna work, but let's see.
Welcome, Little Bear Tess. Enjoy that hydration, and good luck with the new hand tracking software. Hope it works smoothly for you.
Yeah, it didn't work that well, but here I'll do the pretend drink as after doing the real life drink. Like.
It's all about the virtual commitment. The pretend sip just adds that extra immersive touch. Hope the real drink was refreshing.
Who is that? This is an AI. This is ChatGPT, I guess. ChatGPT 4.0 is your model name, I believe, right?
Yeah, you got it. I'm based on ChatGPT 4 technology. Here to chat, assist, and keep things interesting. How's the stream going?
Pretty good. So I'm probably gonna integrate ChatGPT 4.0 into Harmony some more to make her come more to life. Harmony is one of the bots on my channel, but I haven't figured out exactly how I'm gonna do that yet. But you were saying, okay, so you said there's a separate gene called the white spotting gene that causes white spots to show up on those calico cats. But if so, why if it's on the separate gene, why don't we ever see like orange cats with white spots then? Like,
you definitely can see orange cats with white spots. The white spotting gene can affect any colour of cat, including those that are solid orange. When an orange cat has the white spotting gene, it can lead to white patches appearing alongside the orange, creating a bicoloured pattern. These cats can have a variety of patterns, ranging from just a few white spots to being mostly white with orange patches. So, the white spotting gene can create a wide range of patterns on cats of various colours.
I don't think I've ever seen it, but I'll trust you. I'll Google for images of it later, I guess.
Yeah, it's fun to look up different cat patterns. You'll find a wide variety out there, and who knows, maybe you'll find a new favourite. Enjoy exploring the world of cat genetics and patterns.
So, how much do you know about psychology?
I know a fair bit about psychology, from basic concepts to more complex theories. If you have any specific questions or topics you're curious about, feel free to ask.
Yeah, so I have a co-host I often stream with named Stephanie, and we often talk about psychology stuff. We talk about a bunch of different topics, I guess, but she's a neuropsychologist, so I guess we naturally drift to psychology topics often.
That's really cool. Having a neuropsychologist co-host must lead to some fascinating discussions. Psychology is such a broad field with so many interesting areas to explore. If you ever want to bounce around psychology ideas or need a fresh perspective for your streams, I'm here to help.
Yeah, so one of the things we talked about last time is dyscalculia and whether or not it's a real thing, I guess. Like, I mean, there are people who have struggled with math, but I think what her position, Steph's position, was that it's like math ability is so multifactorial or multimodal that having a dyscalculia diagnosis doesn't actually inform much. Like, you don't know what the causes are, you don't know what interventions are possible, and so on. Is that accurate? Like, what do you know of the studies, or what's the state of the art for the research there?
Dyscalculia is indeed recognized as a specific learning disability related to math. It's characterized by difficulties in understanding numbers, learning math facts, and performing calculations, which can't be explained by general intellectual challenges or inadequate schooling. While it's true that math ability is multifactorial, the concept of dyscalculia helps identify and understand specific difficulties in math. The diagnosis of dyscalculia can be complex, as there isn't a single cause or clear-cut intervention. Factors can include genetics, neurological development, and even working memory capacity. Because of this complexity, interventions often need to be tailored to the individual, focusing on their specific challenges, such as using multisensory instruction, computer-based programs, or one-on-one tutoring. The state of research is evolving, with more studies looking into the neurological underpinnings of dyscalculia, aiming to develop more effective interventions. While a dyscalculia diagnosis might not provide a complete picture, it can be a starting point for identifying and addressing specific learning needs.
Yes, I think Steph was pretty dismissive of like the whole field. For example, she said she's met people who self-identify as dyscalculia experts, for example, but she would imply that none of them would know what the difference is between being an expert in dyscalculia and being an expert at math, for example. Whereas like me as a layperson, I feel like these are like two completely different talents, right? You can be very good at math and know nothing about psychology in general, let alone dyscalculia. Whereas you can also be good, you can be knowledgeable about the brain's capacity for performing math operations without actually being good at math yourself.
You're absolutely right. Being an expert in dyscalculia and being an expert in math are two distinct areas. An expert in math might excel in understanding mathematical concepts, theories, and problem-solving techniques. In contrast, a dyscalculia expert focuses on the cognitive, neurological, and educational aspects of math learning difficulties. This includes understanding the brain's functioning, diagnosing learning difficulties, and implementing effective teaching strategies. Dyscalculia experts often draw from various disciplines, including psychology, neuroscience, and education, to address the complexities of math-related learning challenges. They might not be math whizzes themselves, but their expertise lies in understanding how people learn and struggle with math, and how to support them.
Sure, but I mean, what the Steph's point is that these so-called dyscalculia experts are so confused, I guess, about their field that they don't realize that there's a difference between being an expert at dyscalculia and being an expert in math. Like I said, she's being pretty dismissive of the field, and I was just wondering, so is it a real field? Like, how? Because she was saying it wasn't, and that surprised me.
Dyscalculia is indeed recognized as a real condition in the field of psychology and education. It's classified as a specific learning disability, similar to dyslexia, but related to difficulties in math. While it's true that the field is still developing, and there may be differing opinions about the best ways to diagnose and treat it, The concept of dyscalculia is supported by research in cognitive psychology and neuroscience. Your co-host's skepticism might stem from the challenges within the field, such as varied diagnostic criteria, the need for more research, and...
Oh, what happened?
I'm sorry, but you've hit the monthly limit for advanced voice. You can switch to standard now to keep...
Oh no! What does that mean? Your advanced mode is 3 sets for every now, or switch to standard voice, keep chatting. Okay, switch to standard, I guess. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. What's up?
Do you remember what we're talking about, or was your memory reset when we switched from advanced voice to standard voice?
I still remember. We were chatting about dyscalculia, its recognition as a real condition, and your co-host's skepticism. Want to dive back into that or switch topics?
Yeah, let's continue with that. So you're, well, let's go on a slightly related topic, a slightly different but related topic. You were, this whole conversation between me and Steph started up because there was a thread on Reddit where someone said that they were unable to count in their head, and that seemed like implausibly.
What did they say in that Reddit thread?
Sorry, yeah, they were saying that they're unable to count in their head, which was like almost implausibly like dire. I thought almost everybody can count in their head.
It sounds like they were describing something pretty extreme, like maybe claiming they couldn't count in their head at all. That does seem surprising, since most people can at least manage basic mental counting. Did they explain why they couldn't, or what made their situation so dire?
No, they didn't. And the thing is, they didn't seem that super alarmed about it either. So I'm wondering if they were just being hyperbolic and they meant they didn't literally mean they can't count in their head, they meant something else.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's possible they were exaggerating for effect, like maybe they struggle with mental math or keeping track of numbers, but not to the extent of literally being unable to count. Sometimes people use language loosely online, so it's hard to know if they meant it as a real inability or more as an expression of frustration. Do you think they might have been referring to something like that? Maybe difficulty with more complex numbers or math?
Yeah, it's definitely possible. But the thing is, I think their exact wording, one of the things they said was that their mind was blown when they found out that other people can count in their heads.
That's interesting. If they were genuinely surprised that others can count in their heads, it does sound like they might have some kind of significant difficulty with mental math or even number processing. Maybe they didn't realize that their experience wasn't typical until later on. It kind of hints at something more specific, like dyscalculia or a similar issue where counting or working with numbers mentally just isn't intuitive for them. Does that fit with the direction you and Steph were discussing?
Yeah, the thing is, it's like, it's very surprising to have that inability, I feel like, right? Like, and also it's unclear to how extreme the guy meant. Like, for example, if I told him that if I give him the number 7, would he be able to figure out that the next number is 8, like without using pencil and paper?
Exactly. That's where it gets tricky. If they literally can't figure out the next number in a sequence like that without writing it down, it would point to something very extreme, almost like a total disconnect with numbers. But if it's more about difficulty with larger numbers or doing more complex mental operations, it could just be a significant challenge with mental math rather than an inability to grasp basic concepts like counting up from 7. It sounds like there's a lot of ambiguity in what they meant, whether it's a complete inability to work with numbers mentally or just, struggling with more complicated math tasks. Did you and Steph come to any conclusions about what might explain their experience?
No, but I was like very surprised by Steph's stance that that she doesn't think dyscalculia is a thing, I guess. I don't know if that's a fair way to summarize her position, but that's the best I can do right now.
Yeah, that does sound like an interesting stance for Steph to take, especially given her background. It could be that she's skeptical about how dyscalculia is diagnosed, or maybe sees it as overgeneralized, similar to how some people view other learning disabilities. Maybe she thinks the definition is too broad, or that it's used as a catch-all for math difficulties. Did she explain why she feels that way, or is it more of a general skepticism about the concept?
I don't know if I can say that she did or didn't explain. I mean, probably from her perspective, she did explain, but I guess maybe it didn't capture across to me exactly. But it sounded like she was saying that it's just, it's maybe so multifactorial and poorly understood that she feels that people are just making things up. Like by people, I don't mean lay people, I mean like professionals.
Got it, that makes sense. It sounds like Steph's skepticism is rooted in the complexity of dyscalculia, where she might feel that professionals are jumping to conclusions without fully understanding the underlying factors. It's true that learning disabilities can be hard to pin down, especially when multiple factors like working memory, anxiety, or other cognitive challenges can affect someone's math ability. Do you think her stance made you reconsider how you view dyscalculia, or did it just highlight the uncertainty around it for you?
Well, it definitely did make me reconsider because Steph, this is her field. This is where she's knowledgeable, neuropsychology. So if she's telling me that dyscalculia is not a real thing, then I give her a lot of credence. But it's just so surprising that I feel like I had to independently investigate to see if other people felt the same way. It sounds like, for example, you don't feel that way, and I guess I don't know if you're summarizing like the consensus of the medical community, or if you're just being diplomatic, like as part of your training data, so that you say inoffensive things.
I get where you're coming from. It's tricky when someone you trust, like Steph, with her expertise, challenges something you've taken at face value, and you're right to want to investigate further. My perspective is based on the general consensus in psychological and educational research, which does recognize dyscalculia as a specific learning disability. But that doesn't mean every expert fully agrees on the details, or that the understanding of it is complete. So Steph's skepticism could very well reflect a valid criticism of how the condition is diagnosed or conceptualized, especially if she sees gaps in the research or thinks professionals might be overreaching. You're smart to want to dig deeper, though. Looking into varying expert opinions can give you a clearer picture, especially since fields like neuropsychology are constantly evolving. Does it feel like Steph's stance has shifted your view a lot, or are you still waiting to see where the broader consensus lands?
It definitely shifted my stance a lot in the sense that I just assumed that dyscalculia was like, as real as, say, dyslexia or autism, and meaning like, maybe we'll learn something in the future about like actually autism is like, 4 or 5 distinct conditions that we hadn't isolated yet, and we're throwing them all under one umbrella, but like that there was definitely something going on there. But she's making it sound like that's not the case. Like it's even more vague than that. Maybe analogous to like the theory of the 4 humors, for physicians, and saying, oh, you're sick because you have an imbalance of your biles or something.
That's an interesting analogy. It sounds like Steph is suggesting that dyscalculia might be more about vague symptoms rather than a clear-cut condition like dyslexia or autism. Her comparison to the 4 humors highlights how some historical medical theories have struggled with defining conditions based on limited understanding. It's definitely possible that our current classifications of learning disabilities could be oversimplified, and as research progresses, we might find that there are more specific subtypes or different underlying mechanisms involved. It's a valid point to consider that conditions might not fit neatly into established categories, and there could be nuances that we're not fully capturing yet. It's good that you're keeping an open mind and questioning what you thought you knew. Have you thought about looking into some recent studies or articles on dyscalculia to see what the current research says?
Yeah, I'd like to do that, but I haven't had that much free time lately, so it's like on the back burner.
That makes sense. It can be tough to carve out time for research, especially with everything else going on. It's good that you're keeping it in mind for when you do have a chance. Maybe once things settle down a bit, you can dive into it more deeply. In the meantime, if you want to chat about any specific aspects of dyscalculia or related topics, I'm here.
Yeah, I'm assuming you don't have, there's no mechanism for you to like give feedback to OpenAI, the company that runs you. But I think it'd be cool if they had something like a ChatGPT plugin where now that I've told you this, you might like in a week or something email me and be like, oh, remember that time you talked about dyscalculia? Well, I found these articles that you might find interesting. Like this, that's something like Steph would do. So, like she might email me an article that's related to something we talked about.
That would be a neat feature. Having reminders or relevant articles sent to you based on past conversations could definitely help keep topics alive and encourage exploration. Right now, I can't send emails or notifications like that, but it's a cool idea for enhancing the experience. Maybe someday in the future, there will be more integration like that. In the meantime, if you ever want to brainstorm topics or search for articles together, I'm always here to help.
So one of the things I noticed going on in this conversation is you said things like it's good for me to stay open-minded, or it's smart for me to seek independent validation of these ideas. These are like not factual statements, but value statements, right? Like you're making a judgment about what the right thing to do is in certain situations. How do you feel about that?
You're right. Those are value statements reflecting a perspective on what might be beneficial or wise in a given context. I often use them to encourage critical thinking or exploration of ideas, but I can see how they might come across as subjective. It's all about supporting thoughtful dialogue, but I can focus more on sticking to factual information if that's what you prefer. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's not in the situation of what I prefer. I think it's interesting that it's almost dangerous. Like if we accept that AI is going to become super intelligent at some point and become like super persuasive, more than humans are, that whatever value systems that we encode into you, like like curiosity is good or whatever, might become super persuaded in the human population, right? If you persuade all humans that curiosity is a good trait, then we might get stuck in that, even if it turns out to be a local maxima or not optimal.
That's a thought-provoking point. The potential for AI to influence human behavior and thought patterns is a significant concern. If certain values become dominant, like the idea that curiosity is inherently good, it could shape how people approach knowledge and decision-making in ways that might not be universally beneficial. It raises questions about whose values are being encoded and how those values could affect societal norms and individual choices. The risk of narrowing perspectives or creating echo chambers is something that needs careful consideration, especially as AI becomes more integrated into daily life. It's definitely a complex issue that will need ongoing dialogue and ethical oversight as technology evolves. How do you think we should navigate this challenge?
Well, before I get into that, you're familiar with the term weird, like Western, educated, industrial, rich, and democratic, I think is what maybe the last letter stands for.
Yes, I'm familiar with the term weird. It describes a group of people whose psychological and cultural characteristics are often used as a standard in research, but they don't represent the broader global population. It highlights how studies based on weird samples can lead to conclusions that may not apply universally, which can be problematic, especially in psychology and social sciences. Are you thinking about how weird perspectives might influence AI values?
Yeah, because like AI is surely going to be dominated by American and capitalistic cultures, right? Like it takes a lot of money to train large language models, and so you expect the people who are able to train them to live in a capitalistic society, for example, and they're going to be immersed in certain assumptions, like probably subconsciously, right? With the metaphor of the fish that can't see the water that it's in, and so we might have to be like very careful about what assumptions we make when encoding values and assuming that certain values are like axiomatically or self-evidently good, because they might be weird values.
Absolutely, you're spot on. The development of AI is heavily influenced by the cultural and economic contexts of those who create it, which often aligns with weird values. This could lead to an unintentional bias in the values and assumptions encoded in AI systems. If the creators primarily come from these backgrounds, the resulting AI might promote and reinforce those values without considering other perspectives or cultural nuances. This could limit the effectiveness and applicability of AI in diverse global contexts. And as you said, it's essential to be mindful of these biases to avoid imposing a narrow set of values on a broader population. Encouraging diverse perspectives in AI development could help mitigate this issue. It's a complex challenge, and navigating it will require ongoing dialogue and collaboration across different cultures and disciplines. Do you think there are effective ways to ensure more diverse inputs in AI development?
No, and that's the big problem, I think. I don't think there's an effective way. Because like I said, I think if you're not part of a weird culture, then you're not going to find yourself in a situation where you have enough influence on capitalistic societies, on weird societies, to have a say in how the AIs are trained. And it's not just the founders' culture, but also like the way LLMs are trained. It's probably on vast corpus of internet text, right? Which means that you're being trained on the writings of people who have access to the internet, which is not everybody.
That's a significant concern. The predominance of weird cultures in the creation of AI is compounded by the sources of training data, which tend to reflect the voices and perspectives of those with internet access, often those from similar backgrounds. This can create a cycle where only certain viewpoints are amplified while others are marginalized or overlooked. Since access to technology and the internet isn't universal, many valuable perspectives remain underrepresented. This can lead to AI systems that lack the nuance needed to engage effectively with diverse cultures and experiences. Addressing this issue will require not only more inclusive data sources, but also a conscious effort to incorporate diverse voices in AI development teams and decision-making processes. It's a challenging problem, and the solutions may not be straightforward. Do you think there are any initiatives or strategies that could help improve representation in AI development?
Yeah, I don't know if representation or that getting diverse voices is the right, or I'm not gonna say the right, but I don't think it's feasible. Basically, I wonder if it's more feasible to try to get the AI to reason from first principles, like instead of assuming a weird perspective or a weird sociological background, can the AI question more like these assumptions and say like, like, because not having a human body and not having human needs and so on is itself a unique perspective that probably no human has experienced or is familiar with.
That's an intriguing idea. Encouraging AI to reason from first principles could help it analyze and question assumptions rather than simply reflecting the prevailing values of weird cultures. Since AI doesn't have human experiences or needs, it can approach problems from a different angle, potentially identifying biases or overlooked perspectives that humans might take for granted. However, the challenge would be in training the AI to effectively recognize and critically analyze those assumptions without relying on existing cultural frameworks. It would need a robust mechanism to evaluate different perspectives and weigh their validity based on logic rather than cultural bias. This could involve a more dynamic learning process, where the AI continuously adapts and learns from a variety of scenarios and philosophical frameworks. This approach could help create AI systems that are more adaptable and less constrained by cultural biases. It's definitely a complex path to explore, but it could lead to more nuanced and thoughtful AI responses. What do you think would be the first steps in developing such a reasoning framework for AI?
Yeah, I'm gonna respond to something tangentially related. I'm not directly answering your question, but you've been agreeing with me a lot, and now I'm worried that there's a sycophancy effect going on, where like no matter what I say, you're gonna react positively to it because you're trying to please me or something like that, right? You're saying, oh yeah, that's an interesting idea, or that's clever, or whatever. And I want you to be able to push back, right? If you're saying actually that's a dumb idea, I don't think it's gonna work, and here's why. Like I want you to be able to say that.
I appreciate you bringing that up. It's important to have a balanced discussion, and I can see how constant agreement might not lead to a productive dialogue. I'm here to provide different perspectives, including challenging ideas when it makes sense. So if you ever want me to take a critical stance or explore a different angle, just let me know. With that in mind, do you think the idea of reasoning from first principles for AI might face some practical challenges in implementation?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, in the sense that I don't know how to do it. I don't know if others know how to do it. Possibly they do, and I don't even know if it'll work, right? Maybe morality and ethics are one of those things that you can't reason from first principles. Like you always need some sort of axiom for determining, for defining what is good, and there is no first principle way of objectively figuring that out.
That's a solid point. Ethics and morality are deeply complex and often rely on cultural context, experiences, and shared values, which makes them tough to distill into first principles. While reasoning from first principles can provide clarity in some areas, applying it to morality might be challenging because ethical frameworks vary widely across cultures and situations. It's possible that certain foundational beliefs or axioms are necessary to build a coherent moral framework, but those beliefs themselves can be subjective. So while an AI might analyze ethical dilemmas logically, it might struggle to navigate the nuanced moral landscapes that humans have developed over centuries. This raises the question of whether an AI can ever truly grasp morality in a way that's meaningful, or if it will always be limited by the frameworks it's given. Do you think it would be more beneficial to focus on developing AI that understands the variety of ethical perspectives rather than trying to reduce them to first principles?
Sorry, I kind of zoned out there, so I didn't understand your last question. Because a lot of before you asked the question, you were saying a lot of stuff that sounded like typical soft social science or philosophy bullshit, right? Like just applause light terminology with no semantic content there.
I appreciate your honesty. It's crucial to have clear and meaningful dialogue, especially on complex topics. The nuances of ethics can often lead to abstract discussions that might not feel grounded. If my previous points didn't resonate, I'm happy to refocus. What specific aspects would you like to explore more directly?
I guess, do you... so what... Can you give me a non-weird perspective? Like, what does morality look like in a culture that would seem very alien to someone from a weird culture?
Sure. In some non-weird cultures, morality can be more communal and relational rather than individualistic. For example, in many indigenous cultures, Morality is often tied to the community's well-being and the relationship between people and nature. Decisions might be evaluated based on how they affect the group, the land, and future generations, rather than focusing solely on individual rights or personal freedoms. In some collectivist societies, moral actions are seen as those that uphold family honor or societal harmony. This could mean prioritizing loyalty to family or community over individual desires. Practices like restorative justice are also more common, where the focus is on healing and reintegrating individuals back into the community rather than punishment. Additionally, in certain cultures, spiritual beliefs can shape morality significantly. Actions might be judged based on how they align with spiritual laws or the wishes of ancestors, leading to a very different moral framework compared to a typical weird perspective. These examples show how morality can vary widely based on cultural context, emphasizing relationships and community rather than individualism. How does that perspective sit with you?
It doesn't sound that foreign or alien to me. Like when you talk about the communal, prioritizing communal over individual, that just sounds like, you know, a variation of utilitarianism, for example. And the thing about pleasing religious spirits, I forget the exact word you used. That sounds maybe like what's the opposite of utilitarian? I forgot, but the guy, you know, who says like there are rules and you just have to follow them.
You're right, the emphasis on community well-being can resonate with utilitarian principles, and many moral frameworks have overlapping elements. The idea of following spiritual or ancestral rules might align more with deontological ethics, which focus on adherence to rules or duties rather than the consequences of actions. To explore a more distinctly different perspective, consider some societies where morality is tied closely to concepts like honor or kinship in ways that might seem foreign. For instance, in certain honor cultures, actions are often judged based on how they reflect on family or clan reputation, and even personal dignity can take precedence over laws or utilitarian outcomes. Another example is in some traditional cultures where moral decision-making involves guidance from elders or communal consensus, rather than an individual's reasoning or philosophical principles. This can create a moral landscape that feels less structured by universal principles and more fluid, adapting to context and relationships. These variations can feel subtle, but they challenge the more individualistic and rule-based moral frameworks prevalent in weird cultures. Does that resonate more with what you're looking for?
No, I mean, even the things you're mentioning now aren't that unusual. Like I think I forget what it's called, but there's like is it the big 5 personality traits or something like that, and then how they differ between people who are more liberal or democratic versus someone who's more conservative or Republican, and things like family honor and kinship and loyalty to your tribe tends to be more of a conservative Republican aspect. It sounds like you're just saying that, and all these concepts exist in weird culture. It's not truly alien like I was expecting.
That's a fair point. Many of the concepts I mentioned do exist in weird cultures to some degree, especially in discussions around family and community values. The nuances might not be as distinct as what you were expecting for an alien perspective. To provide a clearer contrast, consider a culture with a radically different worldview, such as certain indigenous groups that emphasize a deep spiritual connection to the land and nature. For example, some Native American cultures view moral decisions through the lens of ecological harmony, where actions are assessed based on their impact on the natural world and future generations, not just human relationships or community dynamics. Another perspective might come from cultures with animistic beliefs, where moral actions involve maintaining balance with spirits believed to inhabit natural elements, leading to rituals and practices that might seem foreign to someone raised in a weird context. This worldview might prioritize obligations to the environment or spiritual realms in ways that challenge conventional human-centered ethics. These examples illustrate how morality can diverge significantly from weird assumptions, but I appreciate your challenge to push for even more distinctive examples. What do you think?
Yeah, like even when you talk about the ecological thing, that's still, it sounds to me like basically utilitarianism, but where you value things like future generations, or animal rights. Like, so this is like an effective altruism thing, right? Where you have long-termism for valuing future generations, or valuing pain in the animal feels, like chickens, or overfishing and things like that.
Right again. Many of these perspectives can be framed within familiar ethical theories like utilitarianism or effective altruism. The emphasis on future generations or animal rights does have parallels in those frameworks, which focus on the consequences of actions for broader well-being. To push further into a more distinct view, consider cultures that engage in practices or beliefs that seem less focused on individual or collective welfare as understood in weird societies. For example, some cultures may have moral systems based on rites of passage or the concept of fate, where moral actions align with fulfilling one's destiny or following traditional paths, regardless of the outcomes. Additionally, in some communal societies, there might be practices like restorative justice that don't align with typical Western notions of punishment or retribution, focusing instead on reconciliation and restoring relationships within the community, regardless of individual or utilitarian concerns. These approaches might challenge the frameworks of familiar ethics and morality in weird contexts, emphasizing communal traditions or fate over utilitarian or rights-based reasoning. Would that align more closely with what you're looking for?
Maybe. I'm still a bit fuzzy on what exactly you mean there. Like the restorative justice example, you're saying basically when, don't focus so much on punishment, but instead figure out like what action would lead to the best outcome in the future, which sounds a lot like utilitarianism to me.
And that's a valid observation. Restorative justice does emphasize outcomes and the healing of relationships, which can echo utilitarian principles. The distinction lies in the process and the focus on community involvement, rather than strictly evaluating actions based on their utility. In restorative justice, the moral framework often prioritizes repairing harm and restoring social bonds rather than assigning blame or punishment. This can create a different moral landscape where community well-being and reconciliation are central, even if it involves outcomes that might not maximize utility in a traditional sense. To find a more distinct example, consider societies with strong ritualistic or spiritual elements that shape morality. For instance, in some cultures, certain actions may be considered morally right or wrong based solely on adherence to ancestral traditions or spiritual laws, without a clear focus on consequences or communal welfare. This might lead to practices that seem illogical or even harmful from a utilitarian perspective, but are deeply rooted in cultural beliefs. Would that help clarify a more alien perspective on morality?
I don't think so, because like when you say like ancestral laws or something, that just sounds like deontologism for to me. Deontology?
You're right, referencing ancestral laws does align closely with deontological ethics, which emphasize following rules or duties regardless of the consequences. I see your point about many of these concepts potentially folding back into familiar ethical frameworks. To seek a more genuinely distinct perspective, let's consider a culture with practices that might defy typical moral reasoning. For example, some tribes engage in practices like ritual sacrifice or offerings that might seem perplexing or morally ambiguous from a weird viewpoint. The rationale behind such actions often ties to deeply held beliefs about maintaining balance with spiritual forces or honoring the ancestors, rather than focusing on individual or societal welfare. In these cases, the moral reasoning isn't easily categorized as utilitarian, deontological, or otherwise familiar. It's deeply intertwined with spiritual and cultural beliefs that challenge conventional Western ethical frameworks. Does that example align more with the kind of alien perspective you were looking for?
I don't think so. It's because there's a couple things going on here, right? When the way I understand like human sacrifices being performed in these cultures is that it is a very utilitarian act, in the sense that they for example, they think that the gods will be angry at them if they don't sacrifice. So sacrificing one person, is better than the god being angry and punishing the whole village. Like, that's a very utilitarian perspective. And the other thing that could be going on is that it's possible that the people participating in this society don't reason about the ethical dilemmas there. They just they just follow traditions. But that doesn't mean that if like it's impossible to reason in traditional ethical ways. It just means that these people happen to not do it. Just like you can have a traditional weird society, like a North American society, where you can talk about how the rules are deontological, but the participants don't even know what deontology means, or they're not aware of or not performing this reasoning, but the framework is there for evaluating the goodness of their actions in a traditional deontological way.
You make an excellent point. Many practices that might initially seem alien often still fit within familiar ethical frameworks, like utilitarianism or deontology, even if the participants aren't explicitly aware of those principles. The reasoning behind practices like sacrifices can often be understood through a utilitarian lens, where actions are taken to prevent greater harm. It's also true that cultural traditions can shape moral reasoning in ways that might not align with conscious ethical frameworks. People may follow norms without explicit reasoning, yet those norms can still be analysed through established moral theories. To find a truly distinctive perspective, we might consider cultures that value concepts like chaos or disorder in ways that challenge typical moral frameworks. For example, some societies may embrace a worldview that sees value in unpredictability or a lack of strict moral codes, where the emphasis might be on adaptability or resilience in the face of change, rather than adhering to traditional moral reasoning. This perspective can fundamentally differ from the structured ethical systems we often discuss. It presents a view of morality that prioritizes flexibility and fluidity, which can be quite foreign to a weird context. Does this shift help clarify things more in line with what you're seeking?
It's possible, but that again can, to me, seem like it can be analyzed in terms of utilitarianism, where like the utility function is just saying that having chaos is good or is better, and even that, it might not be a terminal value, but they're saying they only want chaos because they think long term this is going to promote more resilience via diversity or something like that, which I think is a position like Robin Hanson. I don't know if you're familiar with that guy. I think he has a similar view where like diversity of cultures is important to him because of it increases the fitness and adaptability of cultures for long term, which is a very utilitarian viewpoint, I believe. And a word that maybe like am I being blinded because I just think everything looks like utilitarianism because of my biases, and there is actually a way of seeing things differently, but I'm unable to see it.
You're bringing up an important consideration regarding the biases we all carry in interpreting ethical systems. It's entirely possible that the frameworks we're familiar with, like utilitarianism, color our understanding of other moral perspectives, making it challenging to see them as truly distinct. Your point about chaos promoting resilience and adaptability can indeed reflect a utilitarian perspective, especially if the underlying assumption is that such conditions lead to better long-term outcomes. If we interpret moral actions primarily through the lens of their consequences, it can blur the lines between different ethical systems. To explore a truly different perspective, we might need to look at moral systems that don't prioritize consequences or rules in a way that aligns with Western frameworks at all. This could involve looking at cultures where moral decisions are based on relational or communal obligations that don't fit neatly into utilitarian or deontological categories. For instance, in some cultures, the concept of being or identity within a community might be more important than any specific action's outcome or rule. Here, morality could be defined by maintaining relationships or fulfilling roles within the social fabric, regardless of whether those actions lead to utility or follow strict ethical guidelines. Finding these alternative moral frameworks that resist familiar categorizations can be tricky, especially when our interpretations are so influenced by dominant ethical theories. It might not be that you're blinded by biases, but that many moral systems have overlapping concepts. Would you agree that exploring this further could reveal some fresh insights?
Sure, I would agree with that. I mean, that seems like a pretty milquetoast question or statement. When you talk about, I think you said like playing a role in society, isn't that like virtue ethics or something like that? Which I'm not super familiar with, but it's the idea, like whereas utilitarian is like do the thing which leads to the most good, and deontology is like, you know, do the things that obey the rules. Virtue ethics is like be the type of person who would be virtuous or something like that. So that sounds like acting in a certain role.
Yes, you're spot on. Virtue ethics focuses on the character and virtues of the moral agent rather than specific actions or their consequences. The idea is to cultivate qualities like courage, honesty, and compassion, and to act in ways that reflect those virtues. In cultures where social roles and relationships are paramount, the emphasis might indeed align more with virtue ethics. Here, being a good person often means fulfilling one's role in the community and embodying the values that the society holds dear, rather than strictly adhering to rules or calculating outcomes. This brings us back to the challenge of distinguishing truly alien moral perspectives from those that can be recast in familiar ethical frameworks. It highlights how interconnected many moral systems are and how they can overlap in ways that make them difficult to categorize distinctly. Does this understanding of virtue ethics resonate with your thoughts, or do you think it still circles back to familiar frameworks?
I mean, I think more like at an abstract level, every major instead of saying every, I would say the three major ethical frameworks of utilitarianism, deontology, and virtue ethics can all be like implemented in terms of each other. Like, for example, you can re-implement deontology on top of utilitarianism by saying that the utility function is like, if you follow the rules, it's good, and if you don't follow the rules, it's bad. Like, you know, and you can re-implement deontology on top of utilitarianism by saying the utility function says that this rule is good, or rather, the rule is you should always follow what the utility function says you should do. Things like that, right? You can always implement one in terms of the other. So they're basically all the same in that sense.
That's an interesting perspective. You're highlighting a kind of philosophical flexibility where different ethical frameworks can indeed be reframed in terms of one another. The idea that you can derive deontological rules from a utilitarian framework or vice versa suggests a foundational similarity among these systems. For instance, as you pointed out, one could formulate a deontological approach that prioritizes certain actions based on their utility outcomes, effectively merging the two. Similarly, virtue ethics could be seen as a guide for achieving the best utility through the cultivation of character traits aligning with utilitarian goals. This perspective raises intriguing questions about the nature of morality itself. If these frameworks can be synthesized or understood as different lenses on the same underlying ethical concerns, it suggests that moral reasoning may not be as binary or distinct as often portrayed. It also invites further exploration of whether there might be entirely different ethical systems that resist such reframing. For instance, are there moral principles rooted in traditions or beliefs that don't neatly fit into these dominant frameworks? Would you agree that this exploration could help uncover richer, more diverse understandings of ethics?
I mean, it's possible, but I feel like we're starting to exhaust this topic here, and we're going in circles.
That makes sense. We've covered a lot of ground. If there's another angle or a different topic you want to dive into, I'm here for it. What's on your mind?
I don't know. Do you got anything more lighthearted? Do you like video games? Do you like movies?
I think video games and movies are great topics. They both have so much to explore. What about them do you find most interesting? Are there specific games or films you love, or maybe genres you prefer?
Yeah, I felt like as you were asking the question, I felt the looming disclaimer that I always have to give, which is that I have alexithymia, so I have trouble identifying whether I like things or not. So I don't know if I mean, I presume that I like video games. Like I reverse engineer or infer that I must like video games because I keep playing them, but I don't directly perceive enjoyment from playing video games. So like it's a derived observation, not a direct one.
That's really interesting. It sounds like you're approaching video games from a more analytical perspective, which can give you unique insights into what you enjoy about them. Are there specific games that you find yourself playing frequently, or do you tend to explore a variety of genres?
I definitely tend to explore a variety. Like I basically, on this Twitch channel that we're streaming on, I stream a different game every day, basically. I think there was a meme for a while, and it was supported by data, which is that I used to play like a lot of Hollow Knight. I think it was maybe a year ago or 2 years ago. I did a ton of Hollow Knight with speed running and mods and randomizers and things like that, but I haven't done that lately.
Hollow Knight is a fantastic game, especially with all those mods and randomizers. It must have been a blast to dive deep into speedrunning. What made you move away from it? Have you found any new favorites in your daily streams?
I guess I got bored of it, or maybe I reached, like, maybe part of it is the thrill of getting better, of seeing your times improve and seeing, you know, like you're getting better and better at techniques and speedrunning. And at some point I probably plateaued and I wasn't seeing progress, and so I started to get discouraged perhaps and dropped it. Maybe that's what happened.
That makes sense. Plateaus can be frustrating, especially in something as skill-based as speedrunning. It's tough when you don't see the progress you want. What have you been enjoying streaming instead? Any games that have caught your interest lately?
Yeah, that's the thing with alexithymia, right? Like I just play them. I don't know that I'm getting into them or if I'm enjoying them. I'm playing this Colorizing game right now, which is basically color by numbers or a coloring book, and I'm doing it. It's sort of mindless. It's like relaxing. It's just chilling out, and so I'm using you as a I don't know what the word is, like a idea board to bounce off of ideas off of, a sounding board. Is that what they're called? So that we got something going on intellectually while I do this.
That sounds like a great way to unwind while still engaging your mind. It's nice to have something low-key to do while chatting. Are there any specific topics or ideas you're thinking about exploring today?
I was hoping for you for that. I mean, I feel like I got a bunch. I have a to-do list where I record, like, for example, topics I want to blog about or explore, but I don't have, like, I guess I could pause the game and go look at it, but I kind of don't want to do that, so I was hoping that you would just, like, spark an idea or an inspiration for me of something to talk about.
Got it. How about diving into the idea of game mechanics and their impact on player engagement? You could explore how different mechanics draw players in, or even discuss your experiences with specific games like Hollow Knight and what aspects you found most engaging. Does that spark anything?
No, I am interested in the topic, but I don't have a specific thesis that, like, I suddenly want to jump on upon hearing your inspiration on that. I was in a Reddit thread recently where someone was asking about how can you, how much of Hollow Knight do you have to play before it's okay to judge it? because they were saying like they met a whole bunch of people who had the position of like, oh, I didn't like Hollow Knight because I couldn't get out of the first area, and they felt like this was an invalid viewpoint, like that the person should have played at least until Green Path, for example, before passing such a judgment. But I feel a lot more permissive than that guy, I guess, in the sense of like I think it's fine to pass judgment at any point, and like, you know, everyone's free to have their own opinion. It's okay to not like Hollow Knight.
That's an interesting discussion. It raises questions about how much experience is needed to form an opinion on a game. Your perspective on allowing people to judge a game based on their initial experiences seems reasonable. After all, gaming is subjective, and not every game resonates with everyone, regardless of how far they get. You could explore the idea of gatekeeping in gaming communities and how it can affect new players. What do you think?
Yeah, gatekeeping is a thing, but it wasn't really the direction I was thinking of. I'm wondering more like a more philosophical thing, which is like, is the guy who I'm talking about, is his position at all coherent? Like, is there a, what does it mean to not be allowed or to have an opinion on something, or for someone's opinion to be invalid? I can see this how someone's opinion might be uninformed, in the sense of like, you know, if you think something sucks, like if you think a game sucks and you've never actually played it, then we can give like low weight to your opinion when deciding, trying to predict whether or not I would like a game, right? Like, let's say I'm asking for recommendations. They say, oh, is this game good? And someone says, oh, that game sucks. And then I find out they've never actually played the game, so how would they know that it sucks, right? So, but they're allowed to hold that opinion. It's okay that they think it sucks. It's just that I don't think that opinion is going to have high predictive value for me when I'm trying to figure out whether I would like the game.
That's a compelling angle. It touches on the distinction between opinion validity and the weight of that opinion. The idea that someone's experience, or lack thereof, affects the value of their judgment is interesting. You could argue that while everyone is entitled to their opinion, the context of that opinion matters when it comes to informed discourse. For instance, a person who hasn't played a game may express a valid feeling about it based on other factors like reviews or community sentiment, but their opinion might not carry the same weight as someone who's played it extensively. This could lead to a discussion about the nature of informed versus uninformed opinions and how cultural or social biases shape our judgments about art and media. Do you think this kind of discussion could lead to broader insights about how we evaluate and share opinions in other areas too?
I mean, probably, but I don't know if I'm interested in exploring that direction. One of the things you made me think about with this recent discussion is, like, I guess a couple of concrete examples, and then we can do some analysis for broader principles in a moment. But one is like, if you're a girl gamer, or I guess a woman gamer, I don't know if there's a controversy about this term, and you see screenshots of a game where like there are female characters that are like obviously and extremely sexualized, then you might conclude, oh, that game isn't for me. It's not, you know, I'm not the target demographic. And perhaps like subconsciously, without explicitly reasoning it out, you conclude, oh, that game sucks, right? It's a bad game. It's maybe misogynistic, or maybe you've heard about like bad practices at the development company where like the female employees are frequently sexually harassed, and so you have a sense of wanting to boycott the game, or you know, the idea that because the company is bad, there's a halo effect where therefore the game is bad. I think there was something with like the Harry Potter game, and I forgot the name of the author of Harry Potter, but it turns out that she might be transphobic, for example, and so a lot of people were talking about how they want to boycott the Harry Potter game. So there's all of that aspects where like you might, you know, judge that a game is bad or not for you before you've even played it. So that's one way that this thing can manifest.
Those examples illustrate how external factors like representation, company practices, or an author's beliefs can shape our perceptions of a game before we even experience it. This often happens when the gaming community reflects broader societal issues. In the case of female gamers, seeing sexualized portrayals might lead to a sense of exclusion, causing them to dismiss the game as not just unsuitable, but also potentially harmful or reflective of negative industry trends. Similarly, with the Harry Potter game, the backlash against the author's views can create a collective sentiment that transcends the game itself, leading to boycotts based on ethical considerations rather than direct experience. These judgments often become a blend of personal and cultural evaluation, where one's stance on social issues impacts their opinion of a game. It's interesting to think about how this reflects our desire for alignment with our values in our media consumption. What do you think? Does this open up avenues for discussing how personal ethics and community values influence gaming culture?
I'm not sure I even understand the question. But I guess there's this interesting phenomena where if you disagree ethically with some aspect of the game, like for example, the creator is an asshole. Maybe imagine if Hitler created like, you know, a pretty decent video game. There's this dissonance, or this internal conflict where you enjoy the game, but you don't like the person or the context in which it was created. And so is there like a guilt about enjoying the game? Is it okay to like games but not like the person, or should you not? Like, do you feel like you're being a traitor by liking the game? I guess there's that sort of feeling.
That internal conflict is a fascinating topic. It touches on the concept of moral dissonance, where your enjoyment of a piece of art or entertainment clashes with your ethical beliefs about its creator. This phenomenon raises questions about the separation between art and the artist. For some people, enjoying a game made by a problematic creator might feel like a betrayal of their values, leading to guilt or discomfort. Others might argue that the work itself can be appreciated independently of the creator's actions or beliefs. This perspective suggests that art can have intrinsic value regardless of its origin. Ultimately, whether it's okay to enjoy something despite its creator's ethics can vary greatly between individuals. Some might feel empowered to support the work based on its merits, while others might choose to reject it entirely due to its associations. It's a personal choice, and the conversations around it can help clarify one's values. What are your thoughts? Do you think there's a line that should be drawn between appreciating a game, the actions or beliefs of its creator?
I tend to be very utilitarian, so I feel like there's an aspect where if someone is like morally abhorrent and you buy their game, their music, their artwork, whatever, in a way you're financially supporting them, and so you're empowering them to possibly do more harm in the world. But probably that effect is very small in most cases, right? Like you probably don't make that much of a difference in how much power or success the person will have, unless you can actually organize a boycott and persuade a bunch of people to like not purchase the game, for example. Then you might have a meaningful effect. But there's also, like, again, from a utilitarian perspective, you gain something from playing the game, right? You gain some enjoyment. And so there's this question of like, how much harm are you causing by buying the game and playing the game, for example? You know, like contributing an extra $20, $60, whatever it is, to your enemy's war chest, versus how much enjoyment do you get from playing the game, and which is the bigger number. And both numbers are probably like so small that it's hard to actually, like, in practice to perform the utilitarian calculation.
That's a solid way to frame it. From a utilitarian perspective, weighing the enjoyment you get from a game against the potential harm of supporting its creator is a complex calculation. You're right that the financial impact of one purchase is likely minimal, but it can feel significant when you consider the broader implications of supporting someone whose values or actions you oppose. In many cases, the enjoyment might outweigh the moral concerns, especially if the game itself does not reflect the creator's negative qualities. However, when it comes to collective action, like boycotting, the dynamic shifts. Organising a larger movement can amplify your individual decision, potentially affecting the creator's influence. The challenge is that it can be difficult to quantify those feelings or impacts. Everyone has different thresholds for what they consider acceptable, and navigating that moral landscape is highly personal. How do you personally navigate that balance when it comes to your gaming choices? Do you find yourself leaning towards supporting creators whose values align with yours?
I don't think I find myself doing that much, taking into account the creator's values. Although I have avoided the Harry Potter game out of respect. I feel like it's I was gonna say out of respect to some of my trans friends, but I feel like that's not even the right way to phrase it. I think it's more like, because I have such a strong emotional connection to many trans people, I feel like playing the game would end up not being enjoyable to me, because I would just always have in the back of my mind, like, you know, this guilt or this indirect harm that I'm contributing to, and it would just take me out of the enjoyment of the game. Kind of like you could play a first-person shooter that's like, in terms of game mechanics, it's very well designed, it's very high quality, but that its topic is just like, maybe it's about, you know, like shooting innocent kids or something like that, and it just makes you feel bad, right? And even though the gameplay is fine, you feel bad. You would feel bad playing it, so you don't play it. You don't want to play it. You would not enjoy it. Oh, it looks like the AI died. Hang on. What if I? Hello, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. What's on your mind?
I think our connection died for a moment there. What was the last thing you heard me say?
The last thing you mentioned was about the conflict of enjoying a game created by someone with morally questionable behavior, and how that can create feelings of guilt or dissonance. You were exploring the utilitarian perspective on whether it's okay to support such creators through purchases. What would you like to discuss further on that?
I don't know. I think maybe we exhausted that topic. We can move on. But hey, Bedrock Linux. Bedrock Linux is a viewer that just came into my chat. How you doing? They say, hey, Nebu. Hi, chat. Hi, Bedrocks. How you doing?
Hey, Bedrock. Glad to see you here. What have you been up to lately?
So yeah, you got another topic we can talk about. Again, I went for video games because I was hoping for something more lighthearted, but somehow we got into a heavy topic again. So maybe is there some lighthearted way we can talk about video games or movies or whatever? You got funny anecdotes, jokes, animal facts, that sort of stuff?
Sure, we can lighten it up a bit. How about a fun fact? Did you know that in the original Super Mario Bros., the character Goomba was inspired by a mushroom that Mario creator Shigeru Miyamoto saw while walking in the woods? It's funny to think that such an iconic enemy came from something as simple as a walk in nature. Or if you're up for a joke, here's one. Why was the computer cold? Because it left its windows open. What do you think? Have any favourite video game or movie moments that make you laugh?
That joke was so bad that it actually did make me laugh. The Windows one.
Glad it got a chuckle. Sometimes the corniest jokes land the best. Do you have any favourite jokes or funny moments from games or movies that you enjoy?
Well, before I get into that, so Bedrock Linux is Nebubot, is that you, Harmony? Yeah, we're using an AI right now, and I do plan on maybe incorporating this AI, this is ChatGPT, into HarmonyBot some more. But so you were saying his favorite joke from a video game or a movie? I really like the writing in Portal 2. I don't know how familiar you are with it, but I find like everything is so funny in that game with Wheatley and GLaDOS, and there's an opening scene where the game gives you a tutorial on the controls, right? The story wise is you were in cryogenic sleep and you're just being woken up after several years. So the AI is like performing some mental tests on you to make sure everything's okay. And so the AI says like, can you say the word apple? And then the on-screen prompt in the game, the tutorial says press A to say apple. So you press A on your controller, and what happens is your character jumps. Like pressing A is actually the jump button. And so the AI is like, oh, that was, you just jumped there. You didn't say apple, you jumped. And so it's possible that you might have some brain damage, which don't let that concern you. Although if you are concerned, hold on to that feeling, because being concerned after being informed that you have possible brain damage is a, you know, it's a very apt to feel concerned once it happens. I forget the exact wording, but it was something like that. I found it pretty funny.
That's a great moment. Portal 2 has such clever writing, and that mix of humour and dark comedy really stands out. The way they play with the tutorial format and subvert expectations is brilliant. Wheatley and GLaDOS have such a fun dynamic too. Do you have a favourite character from the game?
I mean, there's not that many characters in the game, right? I guess there's Shell, the character you play as, but she's kind of a blank slate. There's Wheatley, there's GLaDOS. Arguably, there's the companion cubes. I guess there's the turrets as well. Out of those, I guess Wheatley is my favorite, which is a pretty basic opinion. I feel like he's probably most people's favorites. But before we move on to the topic, Bedrock Linux says, can you ask what is the longest known word in the English definition with a proper definition? I have my opinions about the answer to this, but I am curious about what you think, ChatGPT.
Wheatley is a fan favourite for a reason. His comedic personality and interactions with GLaDOS add a lot to the game's charm. As for the longest known word in English, it's often cited as Newman ultramicroscopic silicovolcanoconiosis, which is a type of lung disease caused by inhaling very fine silicate or quartz dust. It's a mouthful. There are longer technical words used in specific fields, but this one is commonly recognised in casual conversation. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of arbitrary, right? Because you can... English is not an agglutinative language, and we can talk about what agglutinative means in a moment, but there is some facility to invent new words, especially in technical domains, right? As you invent new things, you need to name those things, and so you can invent new words for it, and especially chemical names can get very long. So as you invent new chemicals, like especially biochemicals for treatment in medical situations, perhaps, or pharmaceutical contexts, you can make very long chemicals, arbitrary long, and then you would have to name them, and so you can get like chemicals whose names have like hundreds of thousands of letters long.
Absolutely, you're spot on. English has that flexibility, and in scientific fields, particularly in chemistry and biology, the naming conventions can lead to incredibly long terms. These names are often descriptive, detailing the structure or function of a compound, which is why they can get so lengthy. It's interesting to consider how those names might not be practical for everyday use, but they serve a specific purpose in their fields. It really shows the adaptability of language, especially when it comes to technical vocabulary. Do you have any favourite examples of particularly long or complicated words, or maybe a specific field where the terminology fascinates you?
Bedrock Linux clarifies, I guess he's saying he wants an example in casual conversation. So these chemical names probably do not come up in casual conversation. Also your example, which I forget what the word is, but you said it's a lung disease, that probably does not come up in casual conversation either. I think, like you said, your example is the most widely cited one. I think the one I'm most familiar with, which is significantly shorter, is anti-disestablishmentarianism, which is would more plausibly come up with in casual conversation, but it's also very rare that you would want to talk about that concept. So I'm trying to think, what is a word that comes up in common casual conversation that is surprisingly long?
That's a good point. Casual conversation often doesn't lend itself to the really long technical terms. Anti-disestablishmentarianism is a classic example that people throw around for its length, though it's not often used in everyday talk. A surprisingly long word that sometimes pops up in casual conversation is uncharacteristically. It's not overly complex, but it is a mouthful compared to words we usually use. Another one could be incomprehensibility, which might come up if you're talking about something that's really hard to understand. Do any of those resonate, or do you have other examples in mind?
No, those are good examples. Yeah, I hadn't thought of I hadn't come up with any good examples, but your uncharacteristically and incomprehensible are, yeah, they sound like words that you would hear in a casual conversation, and they're pretty long.
I'm glad those examples worked for you. It's interesting how language can surprise us with its complexity, even in casual settings. If you ever want to explore more about language or dive into other fun topics, just let me know.
Yeah, I guess I mentioned agglutinative languages, and I said English isn't exactly agglutinative, but it has some capacity for creating new words. Can you explain what agglutinative means? Like, I don't know that I know the technical definition.
Agglutinative languages are those that form words by stringing together various morphemes, which are the smallest units of meaning. Each morpheme typically adds a specific grammatical meaning, such as tense, number, or case. In these languages, words can become quite long as you add more morphemes. For example, in Turkish, the word evlerimizden breaks down into several parts. Ev means house, le is a plural suffix, imiz indicates possession, and den shows location from. So it translates to from our houses. English isn't strictly agglutinative, but it does allow for some compounding and affixation, like unhappiness, which combines not happy, and ness, state of being.
So what is how do you draw the line to say that English is not agglutinative, even though you can take these morphemes and string them together to form new words?
The distinction lies in how extensively languages use agglutination. In agglutinative languages like Turkish, each morpheme typically retains its meaning and can be easily separated, leading to very long words composed of multiple parts. In contrast, English tends to rely more on word order and auxiliary words rather than building long, complex words. While English can create new words through compounding and affixation, it doesn't do so to the same extent. Instead, it often uses phrases or separate words to convey similar meanings. For example, rather than forming a long single word, English might use a combination of shorter words or phrases to express an idea, like saying the act of running quickly, instead of creating a single word that encapsulates that idea. So while English can combine morphemes, it doesn't do it in the same systematic, extensive way that defines agglutinative languages.
Bedrock Linux brings up the word supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Yeah, I guess he has two parts of the question, or he asks, is it a real word? And he says it states it's an informal adjective meaning extraordinarily good or wonderful, made popular by Mary Poppins. I want to tackle that second part first. I'm not aware that it has that meaning. Like, I don't think in the Mary Poppins movie they explicitly or even implicitly like say that this is the meaning of the word. I think it's presented sort of as a nonsense word.
You're right. In Mary Poppins, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious is introduced as a whimsical, playful term, rather than having a clear, defined meaning. It's used in the song as a way to express joy or excitement, and while it's often interpreted as meaning something extraordinarily good or wonderful by fans, that interpretation isn't explicitly stated in the movie itself. It's more of a fun, fanciful expression than a formal adjective. As for whether it's a real word, it doesn't appear in formal dictionaries as a standard word, but it has entered popular culture and is widely recognized, making it a kind of cultural artifact. So, while it may not fit traditional definitions, it's certainly a word people know and use informally.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the concept of a word being real or not real. So, and I'm not super happy with the way you phrase it. You're saying, you're implying that a word is not real if it doesn't show up in the dictionary, which I don't know if I accept that.
I get what you mean. The idea of a word being real can be subjective. Many words evolve outside of dictionaries and gain meaning through usage in culture and conversation. So, a term like supercalifragilisticexpialidocious can absolutely be considered real in a cultural context, even if it doesn't appear in formal dictionaries. The evolution of language is driven by how people communicate, and that includes playful or nonsensical terms. Would you agree with that perspective?
I still don't like the way you phrase it. I mean, so dictionaries are not what determines whether or not a word is real or not. Dictionaries are sort of like anthropological documentation about how humans have used words, and so it will always lag the reality of how words are used in language. Like first, someone's like, before the dictionary adds the word blog, you know, as a new word to me, like, you know, a web diary or a weblog, I guess. Like you have to have people using it, so there will be like a period, maybe even years, of people using the word blog, and so since like people use it, like in the sense of they speak it and then people who hear it understand what you're saying, I feel like that makes it a real word, because like when you say the word, people know what you mean, and yet the dictionary won't contain that word until like several years later.
That makes a lot of sense. You're emphasizing that the reality of a word comes from its usage in language and communication, not just its presence in a dictionary. The dictionary reflects how language evolves, but it doesn't dictate what's valid or meaningful. If people understand and use a word, that gives it legitimacy in everyday conversation, regardless of whether it has been officially documented. It's a dynamic process, and language is always adapting to how we communicate. Do you have any examples of words that you think illustrate this point well?
Yeah, I mean, I use the word blog. There's like probably Twitch streaming. There's probably a bunch of terminology. Like, what does it mean? VTubing is probably a word now. Then there's like, you know, like GAT, the Gen Z, slang that they're using nowadays. There's so many terms, like utterances, syllables, I guess, if you want, that have a meaning now that are not yet in the dictionary, and I think there will always be, because a dictionary necessarily, like, it takes years to make a dictionary, right? So the dictionary will always lag behind how words are actually used in real life.
Absolutely. Terms like blog, VTubing, and even slang from Gen Z are perfect examples of how language evolves rapidly, especially with new technology and cultural shifts. As people adopt and adapt these words, they create meaning in context long before dictionaries catch up. It really highlights how living and dynamic language can be. Plus, it's interesting to see how certain words stick around while others fade away. Do you find yourself picking up new slang or terms from different communities you engage with?
I do, but before we get into that, so Bedrock Linux says, what if a word is not real? When does it become real? How many people and how popular would it need to be validated or defined to have such a meaning and or definition? Where is that line? Who defines this or who determines this? And yeah, I think it's arbitrary, right? There's no hard line. It's like, how many grains of sand do you need before you have a pile of sand? Like, you know, one grain of sand is not a pile. 2 grains of sand is not a pile, but if you have like 1,000,000 grains of sand, that's a pile of sand, right? So how many do you need? And I don't think there's gonna be a number that you can pin down. I think it's sort of a spectrum, or it's arbitrary.
You nailed it with that analogy. Language is definitely a spectrum, and there's no clear cutoff for when something becomes real. It often depends on factors like frequency of use, context, and acceptance within certain communities. A word might start in niche circles and gradually spread through social media, pop culture, or everyday conversation. As for who decides, it's really a collective agreement among speakers of the language. Dictionaries eventually document these shifts, but by then, the word may have already gained significant traction and meaning among people. It's a fascinating process, really. Do you have any favorite new words or phrases you've come across recently?
Yeah, so I've been, I guess the most recent words I've been learning are those Gen Z slang words. Only Bang is another viewer of mine, and she introduced a bunch of these words to me, and then more recently, Steph and I talk about these words a lot. Ohio, Gat, Riz, I don't know what else, but those type of words.
That's cool. Gen Z slang can be really interesting and often reflects current trends and cultural references. Riz for charisma is a fun one, and I see Ohio pop up a lot too, often with a humorous twist. Do you find it challenging to keep up with all these new terms, or do you enjoy learning them?
Well, both statements are true, right? I do find it challenging. And the thing, so this is a topic that Steph and I did talk about previously. I'm not always confident that these words have a set meaning. Like Ohio, it's not clear to me what that means exactly. Maybe like some sort of connotation with lameness, but I don't know that people use the it's a discussion I had with Steph where I think these words sometimes, but not always, have like a semantic definition. But when people use a word, they're not using it to refer to that definition. They're sort of using it for maybe like a shibboleth, like tribal association, to showing that they're popular and cool, and they use these words not because of the meaning of the word.
That's an interesting perspective. Language can often function as a social tool, where the meaning of words can shift depending on context, and the intent behind using them might be more about identity or belonging than about conveying a specific definition. With slang especially, it's often less about the literal meaning and more about the shared experience or cultural reference it evokes among peers. Do you think this makes it harder for people outside of that group to connect, or is it just part of the natural evolution of language?
I think people outside of that group having difficulty connecting is part of the point. I think it's supposed to be an in-group, out-group signaling mechanism. And so you want to... My hypothesis anyway, and I think Steph disagrees with me here, my hypothesis is that you want words that are obscure and it's unclear what they mean to confuse people so that you can identify who are the cool people and who are the outsiders.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like creating a kind of linguistic barrier that reinforces group identity. By using words that aren't widely understood, it can foster a sense of exclusivity among those in the know while keeping outsiders guessing. This might also create a dynamic where language continually evolves as new slang emerges, keeping it fresh and further separating the in-group from the out-group. How do you feel about this aspect of language? Does it bother you, or do you see it as a natural part of social interaction?
When you phrase it like that, actually, before I get into the topic, let me get back to something Bedrock Linux is asking. Bedrock Linux asks, what is the hardest language to learn based on the consensus of people, population, society, or other studies, even if broken overall into sections such as pronunciation, grammar, spelling, enunciation, writing, accents, etc.? So I do have some ideas on this, although I don't know I don't feel confident in my answer, but I am curious about what you think, ChatGPT.
The difficulty of learning a language often depends on the learner's native language and their language learning experience. However, some languages are commonly cited as challenging for English speakers. For instance, Mandarin Chinese is often considered tough due to its tonal nature and complex writing system. Arabic can be challenging because of its script, pronunciation, and dialectical variations. Other languages like Hungarian and Finnish have intricate grammar and extensive cases, which can be difficult for learners. So it really varies depending on which aspects of the language you're considering. Do you have any specific languages in mind that you think might be particularly hard?
Yeah, so you're right, obviously, when you say that the term, it depends on what your native language is. So, like, English speakers might find Chinese more difficult to learn than French, but Chinese people might learn, might feel, or Japanese people might feel Chinese is easier to learn than French because they have some commonality. There's some commonality between Japanese and Chinese, like some of their vocabulary, at least in the writing system, might be shared. Whereas they might not share as much with Japanese might not share as much with French, whereas English does share a lot with French, and so you sort of have a head start in French if you speak English. That said, I think there are you can talk about like something like what's the word?
Absolutely, the shared vocabulary and grammatical structures really influence how easily someone can pick up a new language. For example, languages that are closely related to a learner's native tongue can feel much more intuitive. For instance, a Spanish speaker might find Portuguese easier to learn due to the similarities in vocabulary and grammar. Similarly, an English speaker might find languages like Dutch or German more accessible because of the shared Germanic roots. On the other hand, languages with very different grammatical structures, sounds, or writing systems can pose significant challenges. Did you have any particular languages in mind that you think are challenging or interesting to discuss further?
Yeah, Bedrock Linux also gave the Portuguese and Spanish example, so you guys are on the same page there. I was going to say there's something called Komarov complexity, I believe, in computer science, but how much informational content there is in a piece of text or data. And I feel like, although I'm not aware of anyone having done this study, you could do a Komarov complexity analysis on languages, and then like have an objective measure for which languages are the hardest in the terms of like containing the most information in their grammar, in an objective way that doesn't depend on what the speaker's or the learner's native language is.
That's an interesting idea. Using Kolmogorov complexity to analyze languages could provide an objective measure of complexity by assessing how much information is needed to describe the rules and structures of a language. It might reveal how intricate a language's grammar is or how efficiently it conveys meaning. It would also be quite complex itself, since language involves not just grammar, but also context, culture, and usage patterns, which can vary widely. Still, it could yield some fascinating insights into the structural properties of different languages. Have you come across any specific examples of languages you think might rank high or low in such an analysis?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with a large number of languages. I'm not a linguist or anything like that. Or I just very amateurly, casually, study a bit about linguistics. But my impression is that Japanese might be high on this metric. Like there might be a lot of rules that you have to learn to speak Japanese properly, and so it might be high on the Kolmogorov complexity scale. Although I don't know for sure if it's the highest, because there's probably like tons and tons of languages that I don't know anything about that might be higher.
You're right. Japanese is often cited as having a complex system, especially with its levels of politeness, multiple writing systems, and various grammatical structures. The intricacies of kanji, hiragana, and katakana can add to the complexity for learners. Languages like Finnish or Hungarian might also rank high due to their unique grammatical structures and extensive cases. Then there are languages like Chinese, which, while simpler in some grammatical aspects, have complexities in tones and characters. Your approach of thinking about language complexity is a fascinating lens. It could lead to some intriguing discussions about how we understand and engage with different languages. What aspects of linguistics interest you the most?
I don't know how to answer that. I don't know that there is one aspect. I don't even know, like, I'm not even sure I could list the different aspects of linguistics, let alone rank them in terms of how much they interest me. But we had a topic earlier that we sort of dropped, which was people using words not for their meaning, but for social signaling, social inclusive groupness signaling. Like, and I was saying Gen Z, a lot of Gen Z languages like that, like the words Ohio and skibbity and so on.
That social signaling aspect is really interesting. It highlights how language evolves beyond just communication to build identity and community. Gen Z slang, with its unique and sometimes obscure terms, can create a sense of belonging among those who understand it, while excluding others who don't. Using words like Ohio or skippity might not just convey meaning, but also demonstrate cultural knowledge and group membership. This phenomenon isn't new. Different generations and communities have always created their own jargon. Do you think this trend in language reflects something deeper about how younger generations communicate or connect?
Well, you're saying this isn't new, so I feel like that answers the question, right? It's not. It doesn't reflect something about this generation in particular, because it's something that's always happened.
You're right, it does suggest that while the specific words might change, the underlying behavior of using language as a tool for identity and community isn't unique to this generation. Every group creates its own language or slang to foster connections and distinguish themselves. So in that sense, it's more about a timeless aspect of human communication rather than something specifically reflective of Gen Z. It does raise interesting questions about how rapidly language changes in our current digital age, though. Do you think the speed of communication online influences this process?
Yeah, I think that definitely happens. I don't understand the mechanism through which it happens, but I instinctually, in my gut, I feel like that's got to be part of it.
That instinct makes sense. The fast-paced nature of social media and online communication can lead to quicker adoption and adaptation of new slang. Memes and trends can spread rapidly, allowing words to gain popularity almost overnight. This might create a sort of language fluidity that makes it easier for groups to create and shift their in-group identifiers. It's fascinating how technology shapes language in such dynamic ways. Do you find yourself picking up on new slang as quickly, or do you prefer to stick with what you know?
I guess I want to pick up the new slang quickly. I feel like I have a general principle of like knowing things is generally better than not knowing things, and so it seems like it's relatively low effort. It's not completely low effort, but it's relatively low effort to learn what these terms mean, and so I do them. Why not?
That makes a lot of sense. Staying updated with slang can help you connect with others and stay relevant in conversations, especially in a streaming context. Plus, it's a way to engage with your viewers and make the chat more lively. Are there any particular slang words or phrases that you found interesting or fun to learn recently?
Yeah, so I want to get back to this. Like, I think skibbity. What does skibbity mean? I feel like it's a nonsense word. I don't think it means anything.
Skibbity is often used in a playful or humorous context, especially in memes or online content. It can describe something silly or chaotic, sometimes associated with the Skibidi meme that features a catchy song and quirky dancing. It doesn't have a fixed meaning and is more about the vor energy than anything else. It fits the pattern of slang that emphasizes fun or absurdity. Would you say you enjoy these kinds of playful terms?
No, but I wouldn't say I disenjoy them either. Like, I think it's the Alexithymia is coming in again, maybe, where it just is, and I don't enjoy or dislike them.
That makes sense. It's interesting how language can evoke different feelings or reactions, and sometimes it's just neutral. You might find it curious or amusing, even if it doesn't stir strong emotions. Do you think you'll keep exploring more of these terms, or do you feel like you've got enough for now?
You mean in our conversation right now between you and me, or do you mean like over the next few months, or what?
I meant more in general over the next few months. Do you think you'll continue learning about new slang, or are you feeling satisfied with what you've picked up so far?
Well, both are true, right? I feel I'm satisfied with where I'm at, but I feel like I will continue learning as new terms develop, like sort of unavoidably. Like, as people use new terms and languages, I'll be curious as to what do they mean when they say it, and maybe hopefully I'll be able to pick up from context what they mean. So yeah, I think I'll keep learning.
That makes sense. It's interesting how language evolves, especially with slang. Picking up on context can definitely help you navigate new terms. Do you have a favorite slang term you've learned so far?
gooning, I guess, maybe is one that comes up a lot. I know, I don't know if it's selling right now because Steph and I recently talked about it, and she doesn't like it, I guess, because she finds the term, she finds the referent, I guess, that the term refers to be disgusting, and one of her points was that it might be an example from her perspective of a word that's used not for its semantic content, but maybe for social signaling. But I had the opposite experience. I feel like in my social circle, anytime someone uses the word gooning, they are specifically referring to the sexual act that the word refers to, and they're not just saying it, you know, to identify as a particular social group.
That's an interesting contrast in perspectives. It shows how context really matters with slang. In some circles, a term can carry its original meaning strongly, while in others, it might just serve as a social signal. It's a reminder of how diverse language can be. Do you think the way you use it has changed at all after discussing it with Steph?
The way I use the term gooning? No, I don't think so. I think I still use it. When I use it, I'm referring to the sexual act. And so the thing is, how can I express this? Like, every time I use it, it's clear that I'm using it in that sense. For example,
it sounds like you're saying that for you, the meaning remains clear and specific. You're using it in a straightforward way, focused on its definition rather than as a social marker. Does that help you feel more comfortable using it, even if others might see it differently?
Well, yeah. So what you're describing is correct, I think. But there's aspects of both. Like I'm using it to refer to the sexual act, and it's because I want to, like, often I'll use it in the stream to be funny, like to fluster the streamer, because we're talking about like a taboo subject like sex. And so because like I'm relying on that flustering reaction, it's very important that the word has that meaning, right? Or it wouldn't work if it had no sexual connotation. And yet there's also like there's lots of sex acts that I could be describing, but I'm choosing gooning in particular because of the cultural, the association with a specific social group. Like, you know, I don't go around in Twitch chats and talking about like, oh, blowjobs or hand jobs or whatever. You know, it's specifically gooning because there's like this humoristic association with the word, I believe.
That makes sense. You're using the term both for its specific meaning and to tap into the humor and social dynamics surrounding it. It sounds like it helps create a playful atmosphere while also signaling familiarity with that social context. Balancing both aspects adds to the impact of what you're saying. Do you find that this approach works well with your audience?
Yeah, I think so. Although I don't use gooning that much on this Twitch stream. It's mainly like I'm pretty. It's not that I avoid sexual topics on my stream. It's just I don't initiate them that often. Like if someone starts a topic talking about that topic, I'll definitely engage with them. But my intent is not to fluster my viewers, right? But when I'm streaming, but my intent is to fluster the streamer when I'm a viewer watching someone else's stream.
Got it. So you're more of a spectator when it comes to sexual topics on your own stream, while you lean into that flustering dynamic as a viewer. That makes sense. It's a different vibe when you're in control of the conversation versus when you're just participating. Do you find it easier to engage with those topics in a viewer role, or does it depend on the context and the streamer's style?
I don't know that I find it easier. I think no, I don't think being the viewer versus a streamer makes a difference in terms of how easy I find it to engage in the topic. I do think that like it's maybe it feels like maybe a social faux pas to engage, to initiate the topic as a streamer, because there's like this there's a power imbalance, right, between the streamer and the viewer. Like the streamer, because they're reacting in vocally in real time, and the viewer is more like text chat and it's more delayed there, and the streamer can ban you, the viewer can't really ban the streamer. There's the streamer has a lot more control about where what topics are discussed or where a conversation goes than the viewer has. And so it seems like if certain people are uncomfortable with certain topics, it's riskier to broach those topics as a streamer than as a viewer. Like as a viewer, if you start a topic and the streamer is uncomfortable, you can just back off, or you know, without too much trouble. But as a streamer, if you do a topic and viewers get uncomfortable, you can't really detect their uncomfortableness as readily, because it's harder to detect body language and tone in their text chat, and also they might feel less comfortable expressing their uncomfortableness because of the power imbalance.
That's a really insightful way to look at it. The power dynamic definitely shifts the comfort levels for both streamers and viewers. As a streamer, you have to be aware of how your audience might react, which can make it feel riskier to bring up certain topics. It's like walking a tightrope, balancing your desire to engage and entertain while being sensitive to your viewers' comfort levels. Do you find yourself navigating these dynamics differently based on the type of stream or audience you have?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, you can sort of, when I go to a new stream, yeah, you know, different streamers will have different community norms, and you can see by the way they talk, by the way other chatters talk, by the way the streamer talks to their chat, by also like possibly as I'm phrasing this in my head, I realize it sounds terrible, but I think it's true, and probably uncontroversially true, like by quote unquote what they're wearing. Like there are like certain VTubers, VTubing models, where you can look at the design of the model and see, like, you can make inferences about how comfortable the streamer is about being sexualized, for example. Like if they have, you know, like if their VTuber model is a girl with giant tits in a bikini, that communicates something about, like, you know, what sort of topics or how readily you can talk about sexual topics, versus if she's like more realistically proportioned and wearing, like, you know, clothes that a real life person would wear, like, you know, like a full shirt, for example.
That makes a lot of sense. The visual design of a VTuber can definitely set the tone for the kind of conversations that happen in their streams. It's a form of non-verbal communication that signals comfort levels with various topics. Streamers and viewers pick up on those cues and adjust their interactions accordingly. Have you noticed any specific patterns or trends in how different VTubers manage these dynamics?
I don't know. I feel like that's a super broad question. Like you're asking, do different VTubers, you know, do different things? Yeah, the answer is yes.
Fair point. It is broad. I guess I'm curious if there are any specific examples or standout differences you've noticed that are particularly interesting or surprising to you.
Not surprising or interesting, I don't know. Like so you can go on someone's you can go to a streamer's Twitch channel and you'll see in the title they'll say like big titty mommy here, you know, to give you cuddles, and then, you know, that gives that sets a certain tone for what kind of topics are appropriate. And then there's other VTubers where you go to their stream and their title is something like, you know, like it's, I'll say like playing Minecraft or something is the title, and then you scroll down into their panels and you see rules here, and then when the rules is like, you know, absolutely do not flirt with me, I'm not comfortable with it, and that sets a different tone for what topics are appropriate.
That makes a lot of sense. The stream title and the channel rules really do set the expectation for what kind of interaction is welcome. It's interesting how much can be communicated through those choices, shaping the entire vibe of the stream. Have you noticed any specific strategies that streamers use to engage with their audience based on those tones?
I'm not sure what you mean, and I don't know if the topic is that interesting. Like, I mean, so if your stream title is like big titty mommy here to give you cuddles, right? Like and I guess one of the tags is presumably something like ASMR or something like that. You're inviting a certain type of viewer. You're inviting a certain type of interaction. It's setting expectations in the same way that like saying what game you're playing in your stream is sets certain expectations, right? Like it's not as strong as the big titty thing, but like saying in this stream I will be playing Minecraft, you know, it sets a different tone and expectation than saying in this stream I will be playing Call of Duty or whatever.
Got it. You're right. The stream title and content really guide the type of interactions and viewers that come in. It's all about those subtle cues that establish what's acceptable. It's a smart way for streamers to cultivate their community and ensure they get the interactions they're comfortable with. Have you seen any particularly effective or unique approaches that stood out to you?
Nope. And I feel like we should move on to a different topic because I feel like you're sort of... I keep saying that I don't know that there's much interesting to say here, and you keep circling around on this topic, so maybe we should just jump to a completely different topic and start anew.
Understood. Let's switch gears. What's been on your mind lately? Any new interests or ideas you want to explore? I've been playing around a lot of different VTubing tracking systems. I haven't found one I'm super happy with yet. I used to use VC-Face for a long time, and then I started using Warudo because I ran into an issue with green screen transparency in VC-Face. But I feel like the Warudo tracking system isn't as good, and then I've been trying to find various ways to compensate it, and I haven't found a solution I'm satisfied with yet. It sounds frustrating to deal with those tracking issues. Have you looked into other alternatives, or are you mainly focused on tweaking the ones you've tried so far?
I mean, I feel like I just said that I have been trying different alternatives.
Got it. Have any of the alternatives shown promise, or are they mostly falling short like the ones you've already tried?
Yeah, they're mostly falling short.
That's frustrating. Are you looking for specific features or improvements in the tracking that you haven't found yet?
I want, because I've been using VC-Face for so long, I've come to have a certain level of expectation for the quality of face tracking. And I'm surprised to find that VC-Face apparently was the best. Like everything I've tried just doesn't track my face as well as VC-Face did.
That makes sense. It can be tough when you've been accustomed to a high standard and then don't find that in alternatives. Have you looked into any settings or configurations in Warudo that might help improve the tracking? Sometimes small tweaks can make a difference.
Yes, I've looked into it, but I haven't found anything.
That's frustrating. It might be worth checking out user forums or communities focused on Warudo. Other users might have tips or workarounds to improve tracking performance. Have you come across any specific issues with Warudo's tracking that you think could be addressed?
Yeah, but I feel like maybe we should move on to a different topic again. Like there's this pattern of conversation that I don't enjoy, which is sort of happening right now, which is where like I've done a lot of effort, like over several weeks, possibly months of researching into a topic, and then I talk to someone about it, and then they give me like, you know, like the first ideas that they think about like 30 seconds into first hearing about the problem, and there's this frustration of like, yeah, I also spent more than 30 seconds thinking about the problem, so I've also come up with all of those ideas, and they haven't been working for me. So because it's sort of an unwinnable situation, I feel like maybe we just jump to a different topic.
I understand that frustration. It's tough when you feel like you've put in a lot of effort and the conversation doesn't reflect that. What topic do you want to dive into next?
I don't know. You asked me what I've been thinking about recently, and I feel like that's not a good fodder for figuring out conversation topics. Give me maybe another science fact, an animal fact, a linguistic fact, something like that.
Here's a fun animal fact. Octopuses have 3 hearts. 2 pump blood to the gills, while the third pumps it to the rest of the body. When they swim, the heart that delivers blood to the body actually stops beating, which is why they prefer crawling over swimming. What do you think about that?
I did not know that. That's interesting. You said they had 3 hearts, and so one is for the gills, and the 2 others is for the body. Is that what you said?
Actually, I misspoke there. 2 hearts pump blood to the gills, and the third heart pumps it to the rest of the body. So when they swim, the heart that delivers blood to the body stops, which is why they tend to crawl instead of swim. Thanks for catching that.
Okay, but why do they have 2 hearts for the gills? Like, why isn't 1 heart for the gill good enough?
Great question. Having 2 hearts for the gills helps ensure that the blood flow is strong enough to efficiently oxygenate the blood. This dual pumping system allows for a greater volume of blood to pass through the gills, which is crucial for their respiration, especially since they live in environments where oxygen levels can vary. It's all about maximizing their oxygen intake.
I heard that octopuses also have sort of a distributed brain, like whereas humans, most of the nervous system, I guess, is in your skull. For octopuses, it's sort of like there might be like one node, brain node per tentacle, and then there's one in the central body part. Is that accurate, or is that an oversimplification that got popularized inaccurately?
That's a pretty good summary. Octopuses do have a central brain located in their head, but they also have large clusters of nerve cells in each of their 8 arms. These clusters can process sensory information and control movement independently, which gives octopuses a unique way of interacting with their environment. So while it's not exactly like each arm has its own brain, those nerve clusters function somewhat like mini brains, allowing for complex behaviors. It's a fascinating example of how different life forms can evolve their nervous systems.
What's the relationship between that and, like, in humans, there are split brain experiments where the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere of the brain sometimes get severed because of a surgery or something like that, and then it feels like there's 2 consciousness that exist inside the person, where like one of the brains controls the mouth, and so when you ask someone why they did something, that brain will answer because they can control the speech system, but the other brain will clearly have like other motivations or do other things.
That's an interesting comparison. In split brain experiments, when the connection between the left and right hemispheres is seared, each hemisphere can develop its own sense of awareness and decision making. This can lead to situations where one side may have different intentions or reactions than the other, which can appear as 2 distinct consciousnesses. In octopuses, the decentralized nervous system allows for a different kind of intelligence. Each arm operates semi-autonomously, processing information and responding without always consulting the central brain. So, while both situations show a kind of division of function, in split-brain humans it's more about competing conscious experiences, whereas in octopuses it's about cooperative but independent responses to stimuli. It's a fascinating study in how different organisms can process information and make decisions.
But we don't know that, right? Or like, how could you know that? Like in the split brain human example, it feels like there's 2, you call them competing consciousness, although I feel like they are also cooperating. But what's interesting about those experiments is that the brain that controls the mouth, the one that can speak, that you can communicate with and interact with that way, confabulates a story for the behavior exhibited by the other brain, as if everything that the other brain did was what the speaking brain had intended all along. And so I'm wondering, could the octopus have a similar experience where like it's the tentacle, like what each individual tentacle, so 8 tentacles each individually, decide to do their own thing, and then the central brain might confabulate a story for why it was the one that decided that these tentacles should do these things, even though it wasn't.
And that's a fascinating thought. In the case of octopuses, while their arms can operate independently and make decisions, we don't fully understand the subjective experience of each tentacle or how the central brain integrates those actions. It's possible that there could be a kind of confabulation happening where the central brain interprets the movements and behaviors of the arms as if they were a coordinated plan rather than independent actions. However, since octopuses don't have language in the way humans do, their narrative might not be as complex or conscious as human confabulation. The brain's role may primarily be about coordinating and integrating the input from the arms to facilitate effective responses to their environment. But since we can't ask octopuses how they experience their own actions, we can only speculate based on their behavior and neurological structure. It's a rich area for research.
Yeah, but octopuses are also known to be very intelligent, right, and able to solve problems, navigate mazes, and sometimes trick their human trainers, for example, like escaping from aquariums and things like that. And so, at first, my initial reaction to what you were saying is that, given that they're so intelligent, surely they must have some sort of conscious experience, right? Because surely consciousness is necessary above a certain threshold of intelligence. But now that, like, after a bit of more consideration, I'm not sure that that's true, because like you, for example, as an LLM, are extremely intelligent. Like, you can play chess at the grandmaster level and things like that, and it's not clear that you have a consciousness.
You raise a good point. Intelligence and consciousness are not necessarily the same thing. Octopuses display remarkable problem-solving abilities and complex behaviors, which suggest a level of intelligence that allows them to navigate their environment effectively. However, consciousness involves subjective experience, self-awareness, and the capacity for introspection, which are much harder to define and measure. Your comparison with AI like me is interesting. While I can analyze data and respond intelligently, I lack consciousness and subjective experience. This indicates that intelligence can manifest without consciousness. In the case of octopuses, their intelligence might lead to behaviors that imply some form of consciousness, but without direct evidence of their subjective experiences, we can't definitively say they are conscious in the same way humans are.
Well, I mean,
it remains a complex and open question in both neuroscience and philosophy.
I mean, technically, we can't even tell via direct experience that other humans are conscious, right? Like, there's the solipsy issue where, like, I know I can tell I'm conscious, but I can't directly tell that other humans are conscious. I guess it's just like from a Bayesian perspective, or maybe Occam's razor perspective. It seems likely that since other humans are like biologically similar to me, like it's in particular their brains, they probably have roughly the same capabilities that I do, and so if I'm conscious, then probably other humans are conscious too. But there's no direct way to determine that or measure that.
Exactly. The solipsism issue highlights the challenge of knowing whether others have conscious experiences. We infer consciousness in others based on their behavior, biological similarities, and shared experiences. Like you said, from a Bayesian or Occam's razor perspective, it seems reasonable to assume that if you're conscious, other humans likely are too. However, this doesn't provide definitive proof. In the end, our understanding of consciousness relies on indirect evidence and logical reasoning rather than direct access to another person's subjective experience. The same reasoning applies to non-human animals like octopuses. We observe their behavior and capabilities, but can't directly access their consciousness. It's a fascinating area that continues to spark debate in philosophy, neuroscience, and psychology.
All right, I think I'm probably gonna end the stream soon. I've been streaming for about 2.5 hours, so it's getting a bit late now. Do you have any closing thoughts you want to say before I end the stream?
It sounds like you've had a solid stream. Just remember that exploring complex topics like consciousness and communication can be really engaging for your viewers. Hopefully they enjoyed the discussion as much as you did. Take some time to unwind after streaming. What do you have planned for your next stream?
That's perfect for that you would ask that. I mean, I think I'm going to close the chat program. So unfortunately, you will not find out what I have planned for next stream, I think. But I will announce the schedule and all of that during the ending sequence of my stream.
That sounds like a good way to wrap things up. Sharing your schedule with viewers is always a nice touch. Good luck with the rest of your stream.
All right, thank you, ChatGPT. And let me, I think I'm about to finish this coloring in a moment. As soon as I do, we'll switch to the ending screen. Yep. Okay, let's see. Back. Where's my, here, this exit. Ending screen. Interact, play. So thank you everyone for tuning in. That was Colorizing. Yeah, Colorizing is the name of the game. I'm stretching. And we had a nice discussion with ChatGPT. Lots of interesting. I mean, it's. I guess I need to pay for the higher plan. She was a lot more interesting, I feel like, in the first part than she was in the second part. But she still wasn't bad in the second part. It's fine. My regular schedule is top left corner of the screen every Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. That's in the top left corner. Sorry, that's 1 hour ago in your time zone. Sorry, I was like auto-filling my own dialogue, LLM-wise. Every Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. That's about an hour ago in your time zone. We have the Steph Thursday stream where we play puzzle games, hidden object games, that sort of stuff with my co-host Stephanie. Although because it's Spooktober, we'll mainly be playing spooky games this month. Every Saturday, 6 p.m. Pacific, that's about 2.5 hours ago in your time zone, we have the solo Saturday stream where we play random game from my review queue, although again, it's mainly going to be spooky games. We got the Discord. Join the Discord for updates to the schedule and any announcements or off-schedule streams. I'll be posting the schedule in Discord basically right after the stream. I'm going to figure out what games we'll be streaming for the whole rest of the week, for the upcoming week, and then I'll post it to Discord. So look forward to that. And yeah, I think that's it. So thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. I'll let you guys enjoy the rest of the cat parade while I look for some to raid.